Thank you for so much for being here with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Today, we
Absolutely.
meet author and playwright Craig the Writer Stewart. Craig attended Hampton University and graduated with a degree in liberal arts. Following graduation, he relocated to Atlanta, Georgia, where he wrote and produced a stage play entitled A Day in the Life, which sold out its first run. In 2012, he released his first book, Words Never Spoken, a memoir. In 2015, it was followed by the sequel, One Thing for Certain, Two Things for Sure, a memoir continued. In his third release in 2017, So Much to Say, a book of quotes, all which carry a 5-star rating on Amazon. Craig is also the founder of Say It in a Card greeting card company and the showrunner for the Queen's Supreme Court online show with T.S. Madison. Today, we dissect his new book titled Book of Jewels for personal development. We talk about some of my favorite lessons from the book,
I really enjoyed the life chapter.
as well as the journey and process of developing vision.
Is that sometimes when you're a visionary, you see the vision long before everybody else does.
And defining our purpose.
Purpose is about what you were called to do.
We wanted to create something that was inspiring, empowering, relatable. A safe space that we can discuss life and career as it relates to us. I believe that we all have different journeys, but similar struggles. Why not learn from each other by listening and conversing? That's what it's all about. For us, by us. This is Coffee and Conversations.
So you probably don't remember me, but I used to do Uber,
Okay.
and I was taking you. I think this is when you first started with the Queen's Court, and I picked you up and was taking you to C.S. Madison's house, and it was like a 40-minute drive. So thank you for the ride. Um, and I don't remember exactly what we spoke about, but our conversation was so just inspiring, and it was really dope. And when we started this project, Coffee and Conversations, you were one of the first people that come to mind to just give your feedback and your perspective on this. So I really appreciate you for coming out for Coffee and Conversation.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So we're talking about vision and purpose,
Mm.
which in your new book, Book of Jewels for Personal Development, you talk a lot about purpose,
Mm.
vision, what it is to find your vision.
Your
Vision is
how you see yourself in the world, how you see yourself moving through the world, how you see yourself contributing to the world.
mm,
And for a long time, I didn't recognize that I was a visionary. It was during a time in my life where I was trying to allow my confidence to catch up with the talent. I think the
mm,
talent was there, but the confidence hadn't quite caught up. Because, especially when you're an artist, or even if you're an entrepreneur, but especially as an artist, it's hard to convince yourself and the people around you, whether it's family or friends, that you are an artist and that what you do is valuable. Because
right.
if you haven't started to make your mark, and when I say make your mark, I mean really start to put work out into the world for people to consume it, whether it's a stage play, whether it's books, whether it's music, whatever, and you haven't started making money from it, it's hard to convince people that this is your contribution and this is what you were born to do.
Yeah.
And so for a long time, I had pined over this stage play that I had written. That's the thing that comes to mind with your question, because I was 26 when I wrote my first stage play. I'm 44 now, and that show sold out at 26. Like I just had
Mm,
like a street team. I didn't even have a street team. I was the street team with a few people that I knew, and we would go out to clubs, and if there was an event happening at the Civic Center, we would pass out little makeshift flyers that we printed on the computer at my house. And we would pass those out and let people know that a day in the life was coming. That's the name of the show. And the show sold out, but then the show flopped twice consecutively. Then it sold out again. But these were years apart. Like there was a gap in time. And I remember during those gaps, when I was sitting in those gaps, I still needed to live. I still needed to exist and figure out what my next step was. I was so hung up on that one idea that, I just didn't allow the universe or God to use me for other projects. That's why now I'm constantly working on things like I have a greeting card business, and I don't just sit and focus on that. Like I've put that out to the world, and now I'm writing a book, or I put that out to the world and now I'm working on a podcast. So I just work on multiple things, but they're all germane, they're all connected. But when I was working with that play, with The Day in the Life, I didn't recognize, because my goal was for the show to go on a national tour. That was what I wanted for A Day in the Life. Mm-hmm. But sometimes God can dream, not sometimes, all of the time, God dreams a bigger dream for you than you'll ever dream for yourself. And so my dream and my goal was to get that stage play on a national tour. And obviously the universe, God had other things for me, but I was focused on that, and I was hung up because I couldn't get financial sponsorship or corporate sponsorship or investors to invest in the show. Even though it had sold out here in Atlanta, I couldn't get them to fund it to go on a national tour. And what I took away from that, and I write about this in Book of Jewels, looking back, is that sometimes when you're a visionary, you see the vision long before everybody else does. Right. And when I think of visionaries, I think of people like the Oprah Winfreys of the world. I think of like the Bill Gates of the world, just to name a couple. Because in the book, I talk about how, just imagine Bill Gates trying to convince people, that everyday people, that you need a personal computer in your house. Mm-hmm. No one believed that at the time. But now most people have a personal computer in their house, and you can't even imagine not having internet. Right. Let alone a personal computer. But he was a visionary. He was forward thinking. That's a visionary. And so I was forward thinking with respect to that stage play because it sold out. But the promoters and the investors and the people that I was pitching the idea to take this show national didn't see the vision. They didn't have the vision. But now, some 20 years later, everything that we see now has LGBTQ content. Yeah. Every TV show, every book, every movie wants some element of LGBTQ. But when I wrote this stage play, what they said to me was, no one's talking about that. That's too controversial. No one's going to come and see that play. Oh, yeah, it's sold out in Atlanta, but that's not going to work in other markets. But now it's working.
I personally feel that vision and purpose are different, but they always should align.
Yeah, I think they definitely parallel. For me, I think purpose is about what you were called to do. It's what you were called to do with your time. Good. With your time on earth. And we all have that limited amount of time. And, in the chapter in Book of Jewels, it's called Passion, Fate, and Destiny. Your time on earth.
My favorite chapter.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite chapters writing. That one, as well as Love and Fear and Dating. Those are three of my favorite chapters writing the book. But, you have to decide and figure out what you were called to do with your time on earth. That's really what this is about. That's really what the assignment is. Like, what were you called to do? How are you going to contribute to shaping the world, altering the world differently because you were here? And I think that's what your purpose is, and I think that it's in that chapter also where I speak about like Mother Teresa and Martin Luther King and, these huge figures that have made such impacts on the world. But it's not just about those people making impacts. It's about the individual people like me and you. Because if everyone was living up to their calling, their purpose, the world would be different. Like perhaps there would be cures for cancer because some aspiring doctor would actually go to medical school and figure the shit out. But sometimes, we try to live up to the standards and expectations of family, especially with family. You know, like I've heard plenty of stories of people who have gone to college, but they majored in business because that's what their parents wanted them to major in, and the parents are paying for their education. But they really wanted to be in the theater arts. Or someone who went into the medical field, really not wanting to be in the medical field. You know, but I just really think that if we all exhausted our talents, we could cure things like homelessness. Because there's someone, for not just one single person, but there are people who are called to do that particular kind of work. And if those people were doing that particular kind of work in their communities or in their regions of the world, we could probably suppress homelessness and hunger and, you know, just whatever it is, you know, world issues.
Of course. I really enjoyed the life chapter. I sort of named it for myself, appreciate the pit stops and pay attention to the clues. You mentioned that God left you clues that there was something greater.
And it's true, you know, and it is, you know, when I was even very intentional in how I named the chapters, but even how I ordered the chapters. So like the first chapter of the book is life, you know, and because I really wanted to lay a foundation for how things started and how they, you know, began for me. And, you know, how I was on this trajectory where people could see it. Like there were people that I knew personally and people that I did not know, like people that I knew in passing that would say, oh my God, you have this amazing aura. There's something about your energy. And I never knew what that word aura was, like as a kid, you know, I'm like, what the hell do you mean this aura? Like, and it's like, you have just this glow, but people couldn't really put it into words. You know what I mean? It was just like, it's just something about you, you know, and I was just one of those people that people would gravitate to, even perfect strangers. So now, as I've become more visible because of social media and because of the work, I always remind myself, Craig, people have always gravitated to your personality. They're not gravitating to you because of this. They're not gravitating to you because you're connected to the Queen's Supreme Court or because they know you from social media or because they've read your book. You have that kind of energy. You have that kind of effervescence that draws people to you. So I've always been very clear about not confusing the two, because I think sometimes when you start moving on a onward and upward trajectory, or quote unquote success, some people might call it, it's easy to think that people are just trying to be around you and just trying to, you know, social climb and connect. But I have to remind myself, no, girl, you're the person that when you go into the grocery store, somebody will just start talking to you in the aisle. You know what I mean? Like you'll just start laughing, but it's that basic.
Or
so
in an Uber.
Or in an Uber. You know, so I always remind myself that, you know, because I don't ever want to stop seeing the good in people. And I don't want to always assume that people are being opportunistic.
What about distractions? So in your book, you said confident people aren't intimidated by confident people. This is something that I got from it. Many times we get distracted by what the next person has, or it's happening for the next person, or maybe it didn't take as long for the next person to get to their goal. And to me, I felt like those are distractions and don't pay attention to it. How do we handle distractions along going through the process?
Well, you know, one of the things that I recognized about myself years ago, I've never been a person to be jealous. I've never been a jealous person, because I believe that when you're jealous of other people, it really is your fear that God isn't going to bless you as abundantly, or God hasn't blessed you as abundantly. But I remember, you know, comparing the best of myself to other people. I wasn't jealous, but I was comparing the best of myself to other people. And so, again, I was an artist. And I was writing plays, producing plays, and doing that kind of thing, where I had friends who had traditional jobs. They had corporate jobs. So with those corporate jobs, you have a check that you're going to get once a month, every 2 weeks, once a week, however often you get paid. And so it provided them a stable life that I did not have. I lived a very precarious life. Now, for a long time, I was working, like I worked Fortune 500 jobs. But then I got to a point where I made the decision, I'm either going to be an artist or I'm going to work. I can't get tied up over here at Coca-Cola. My first job out of college was Coca-Cola. And I have a friend, she is still there from 1998. She's vice president of something. Like we started in a call center. She's now vice president of some division. Amazing, but that wasn't me. But she's already owned her homes, and you know what I'm saying? She's done all of those things because she's had that stability of a check, where mine has been ups and downs. There've been ebbs and flows in my career. But when you look at the bigger picture of things, and she said this to me before, she said, I love what I do. She said, but Craig, you've always loved what you do. She said, you were always carving your own path. And it's amazing how people see you versus how you see yourself. Because for me, it was difficult. You know what I mean? For me, it was difficult being on that journey. It was very lonely. It was very isolated. But that's where my best thinking came from too. And it wasn't always practical, because every month I was trying to figure out how to pay this bill and juggling this and juggling that, trying to be strategic. But where she didn't have those kind of financial woes, you know, but then she also didn't always feel like she was, you know, pursuing her passion either.
Yeah.
So it's all subjective. It's all in how you choose to see it and how, you know, but I just learned I can't compare the best of myself to other people. And I had to focus on my journey. My journey is my journey alone. And that's it.
Absolutely.
And, you know, the other part of that, you know, in that chapter, you're talking about envy. What I've learned is people are either inspired by you or intimidated because of you. There is no in between.
Yeah.
Which goes to that sentence that you were just reading, which is confident people aren't threatened or intimidated by other confident people.
Yeah. I like, and I sort of correlated it back to a quote in life. It's funny how all of your chapters sort of just kind of intertwine perfectly. You talk about it's your responsibility to find purpose in everything. It's your responsibility to make sure that your vision comes to life, and you can't depend on anybody else. And for me, I remember starting my event management company. I said exactly what you said in your book. If I could just meet this person or meet the right person and just get my foot in the door.
Trying to network up.
Yeah. And it took me to realize, you know, it's your responsibility to make this happen. Nobody else owes you anything in this world.
And I'll take it a step further than that. You see it all of the time on social media. And I was guilty of this when I published my first book. Well, you know, strangers will support you before your own friends or family will support you. But no one is required to support. That's your vision. That's your dream.
Yeah.
That's yours. Because when you make that $1 million, you ain't splitting it with them. You might do nice things for them, but you ain't splitting it. Okay, well, here's your third, and I'm going to take my third. You know, that's your responsibility. That's your dream. You know, and someone said that in reference to someone else. I just happened to overhear it. This was years ago. And she said, baby, this is your vision. She said, this is your dream. People don't have to buy into your dream. You know, so to assume that people have to devote their time, talent, and energy to what you're doing, you know, that's wasted energy on your part. You're upset and frustrated with your friends and family because they're not volunteering their time for your event. They're not coming over to be admin support for your company or whatever that you're trying to do. No one has to do that. But what I do understand and know to be true is that when you get that ball rolling and people see you working, people will jump in and say, hey, do you need help with such and such? I can help you this weekend. Yeah. People will volunteer their time, and not just people that know you. Perfect strangers will say to you, oh my God, I really respect what you're doing, and I admire what you're doing. You know, let me know if you ever need any help. But like that will happen, but people have to see it on you first. And I think a lot of times people are quick to ask for help before they've even rolled up their own sleeves and try to work. And as a person now that's starting to make inroads, I get it now, and becoming more visible through social media. I have people messaging me all the time. Hey, can you write my book for me? No, I can't. You have to write it. You have to do that. I'm busy promoting my own, because what happens is people have this idea that you're further than they think you are. You know what I'm saying? People imagine that you're further along than you actually are sometimes. And they're like, oh, well, can you just help me now that you've made it? You know, but my God, it's like even Oprah, she's situated doing what she's doing. But why would it be her responsibility to take my book, my story, to say, okay, well, let me go ahead and publish a book? No, why not do it yourself? That was my thinking when I published my first book. I'm not waiting for a major publishing company to give me permission to tell my story. I could literally, Words Never Spoken came out in 2012. That was 8 years ago. I could literally still be waiting for a major company to say to me, okay, well, yeah, we'll go ahead and publish your book. No, I did it. I did it already. You know, so now the tables are turning. I've already been selling the book. It's over on Audible. It's on all of the e-readers. It's on Amazon. You can buy it directly through my website. So what would happen now would be the only thing that a publishing company could do for me is offer me a distribution deal. You know what I'm saying? You cut me a check and then you go ahead and put it in a few different languages and put it, you know, you can do that. But like, no, I don't want to be a slave to, you know, but when I started off, the vision was, okay, how am I going to get this published? And my mom was in my ear. Oh my God, how are you going to get this published? You have to silence the noise.
Yeah.
She didn't even have the vision. And I'm like, I said, listen, you're taking me too fast. I'm not even done writing it. So I don't have to worry about how it's going to get published. That's the universe's job. That's God's job. My job is to write it. And I'm only on chapter 1. So we don't even need to have this conversation about how you're going to find a publicist and how you're going to find a publishing company. All of that stuff will work itself out. And it did exactly just that. Because when I published Words Never Spoken, there was no Facebook Live. There was Facebook, but there was no Facebook Live. See, the universe had already been working on the back end. The universe already knew how I was going to do that.
Yeah.
And because Facebook Live is the main reason, the main conduit for my book sales. It's the reason, it's the way that most people reach me, through Facebook or YouTube Live. There was no live back then. So that's why I say all the time, you don't have to figure out the dots. You don't have to try to connect the dots. The universe is going to do that. You just have to keep walking and watch those dots, those lily pads, as I described them in Words Never Spoken. They're going to appear. Because sometimes people are afraid to take a step. It's like, well, where am I to step? You just step. And that's, but that's faith. But that's what faith is, you know.
I'm so glad that you sort of segued into faith, because you gave a formula in your book, and belief plus action equals results. How do we apply that?
Well, you know how people say,
so why is that important?
Well, because, you know, sometimes people will say, well, you know, God got it. You know, I just need to have faith, and, you know, just, you know, just, it's all going to work itself out. What belongs to me or what's for me is for me. Yes, you have to have that belief, but you also have to have action. You know, you have to put effort behind that belief system, because prayer isn't magic. God gives us the tools also to, you know, make things happen. It's just like if you were diagnosed with some sort of a disease or sickness, yeah, you pray, but you also take your ass to the doctor or get some sort of treatment or something. Like, you don't just sit and be like, oh, well, God's going to take. Oh, okay. Well, he also gave you common sense too. You know what I mean? So he gives you the tools to apply that to the belief and the prayer. Trust your instincts, be adaptable, be willing to move whichever way the universe pulls you or pushes you. You just got to be willing to go wherever the universe takes you. That's, for me, that's one of the keys to life. And that was one of the biggest life lessons that I learned living in LA. You know, be adaptable. You know, stop being so set in your plan for what you think you want your life to be, because it you know, it all happens the way that it's supposed to. And the things that you look at as setbacks, they're never setbacks. Those are things that are, even if it's a detour, because the journey is still the journey. You know, there may be some detours because there are lessons that you need to gain and garner on that detour that you wouldn't get otherwise. You know, there were times that I worked jobs. I had to stop, you know, chasing my dream to work a job for a year. And I mean, it didn't really offer a lot of time in my off time to like still push and work on my dream. So it was almost like there were times that I felt like I was abandoning my dream for a year or two or whatever it was, 6 months. But trust, believe, and know that detour is a part of the process. It's a part of the grand scheme of things. The universe has something in store for you over there at that rest stop. There's some gems, there's some lessons over there that you wouldn't get otherwise. You know, like I remember working in retail for a period of time, a short period of time. But by the time I was working there, I was starting to grasp this idea that there's something here for you, there's a lesson here for you. And working in that retail place, it really taught me how to deal with people from all walks of life. And that works with me now. It helps me now when I'm touring with the book and I'm meeting white women, Black women, gay people, straight, trans, like whatever it is, you know what I mean? And even speaking on my social media, like whether it's YouTube Live or Facebook Live, like I'm addressing so many different people. Part of that wisdom came from that job. You know, but if you get caught up in this idea, like, well, I'm just ringing customers up. No, there's something, they're bigger lessons. And until you get the lesson, you're going to stay at that station in life. Once you get that lesson, then you can advance to the next station in life. But, you know, prior to that retail job, I remember working places and just hating it. I worked at a restaurant as the host. All I had to do was take the menu and seat the people, and I hated it. And answer the phone and take dinner reservations. I hated it. I felt like it was a waste of time. I felt like it was in the way of my journey, my dream. And because I didn't appreciate it at that time, things didn't advance right away. That's when I had to, you know, go through some other obstacles, because every lesson repeats itself until you learn it.
Yeah.